Hello, everyone. My name is Elisa Ewan, and I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations at Teachers College. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for the Alumni Career Development webinar series featuring Kenneth Silvestri. The webinar series covers a range of career topics and includes speakers from a variety of backgrounds. The series is co-sponsored by the TC Office of Career Services and the Office of Alumni Relations. Videos of past webinars are available on our website at www.tc.edu/alumni/career-webinars. Today, alumnus Kenneth Silvestri presents "'Tis the Season to Forgive, a Mindful Process to Deal with Stress." Kenneth is a systematic psychotherapist and a certified classical homeopath with offices in Montclair, New Jersey, and Nyack, New York. He offers a unique, integrative, and mindful approach to improving one's immune system by resolving emotional and physical problems. His recent book, A Wider Lens: How to See Your Life Differently, was published in 2018. Before we begin, if you have any issues with the audio or technical difficulties throughout the webinar, please chat me directly in the chat function. And without further ado, please welcome Kenneth Silvestri.
Thank you, Elisa. I am delighted to have this opportunity. Much of what I will be discussing today had its origins from my studies here at Teachers College and with Paul Byers, who was my mentor and advisor, who I would like to dedicate this talk to. Also, thank you to all of you who are listening and have made time to attend. Today I would like to share, as Elisa said, a mindful approach to dealing with unhealthy stress, especially for this time of year. As a prelude, though, I just want to emphasize, and this is important, we're all unique, like every snowflake. How you respond will come from many different nuances, some subtle, some not too subtle, and yet we all share a common existence. So as we begin, I just want to share, something that is very important to me. Poets and anthropologists have taught me that it's not with ideas, but with things that we make sense of our world. And today is Emily Dickinson's birthday, and I just want to read a part of a wonderful poem that I think is relevant to what we're talking about. The world is not the world is not conclusion. A species stands behind, invisible as music, but positive as sound. I think it's worth repeating. The world is not conclusion. A species stands beyond, invisible as music, but positive as sound. Given that we can't see each other, I would like, if all you can, visualize sitting in front of this fireplace, hopefully relaxing and ready to share. FDR, in one of his fireside chats, said that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. It is my sense that if we don't embrace forgiveness, we will end up with the consequences of fear. So therefore, it's very good to, I think, to understand, the difference between, fear and moving forward. The next slide here is a favorite quote of mine. It informs pretty much all of which will follow. And please read it out loud with me. This way we can be somewhat interactive, given our limitations. I can't see you, you can't see me. But here it goes. The major problems in the world are the result of the difference between how nature works and the way people think it works. And that's from Gregory Bateson. The major problems in the world are the result of the differences between how nature works and the way people think it works. Think about that for a moment. Nature, nature is so full of differences, changing each day and each moment. That's a blend of good and bad and yin and yang. It somehow comes together with some unity, and we're all part of it, different and unique, but we all are unified in many, many ways. My agenda really is very simple. Managing stress consists of having a wider lens, being mindful, being in the present, creating a supportive environment, celebrating possibilities, and most of all, being fallible and making adjustments. And I'm going to try to relate this also to forgiveness. First of all, the AMA is finally, after many, many years, I think it was just 2 years ago, is saying that all chronic illnesses can be traced to mismanaged, complicated stress. I think they're finally taking a step into connecting the mind and the body. And before that, it was always a little bit different. But yes, all chronic illnesses really can be traced to complicated, stress. And what do I mean by that? Well, compounded by reliable research that describes people in the United States are more likely to feel their stress increase rather than decrease during the holidays. The holidays create stress, and it takes on a different character than any other time of the year. And men and women alike, feel a duty to make the holidays the best they can for their families. Stress is like the weather. We know it exists, but we cannot always figure out how to deal with it. But we must deal with it. So, kind of an interactive thing here. I have a question that I would like you to, to answer to yourself. Obviously, what is it, especially during this holiday season, that you are not getting in life that causes you concern and hinders you from making your life work the way you want it to work? Think about this for a minute. We all have a core grievance or a concern, but what is it? What is it that you're not getting at this time of year that kind of creates a barrier? So think about it. And when you define it, focus on the consequences. Think about the behavior and the results of what it is. Visualize it. Feel it. Touch it. Make a mental note of how it affects you, how it affects those around you. And if you'd like, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being very good and 10 not so good. And just keep a mental note of it. I also would like you to try something also that will help you understand some of the things I'm talking about stress. And I want to share with you a very special way of breathing. It's researched and developed by my friend Steve Elliott, and it's called Coherent breathing. It is well tested for its healing powers. And if you'd like to read about it, there's a wonderful book called The Healing Power of the Breath, and it's by doctors Richard Brown and Patricia Garbug. And it actually goes over a lot of the research on the healing of breathing. Well, this is what it is. Normally we breathe at 15 breaths per minute. That's pretty much the average, as we're all part of the species. But coherent breathing is a technique where you breathe 5 breaths per minute, and it activates the vagus nerve. That's the nerve of compassion, a nerve that wanders through you, connecting your brain to your gut, to your it regulates metabolism of your heart. And a book that came out a few years ago by Dasher Keltner from Berkeley called Born to Be Good actually goes over the vagus nerve, which is now used by cardiologists and is talked about in issues of autism. It's a Latin meaning wandering, and that's what vagus means. So what I'd like you to do, just to be somewhat interactive, I would like you to relax. I would like you to relax from head to toe. Focus again on your concern. Put it into context. What it is that's bothering you at this time of year, what it is that you're not getting. I want you to sit up straight, looking straight ahead at the fireplace, if you may, and create a peripheral view. Look at the sides of your room as you keep your head straight. Look at the ceiling. Envision the community and even the world. Feel the warmth of that fireplace and feel yourself creating a perspective. Now I'm going to have you breathe just for a few moments. It would be 6 seconds in, if you can, at the sound of a chime. And I'm going to bring up a chime here. And as you breathe out, as you exhale, have a positive thought at the sound of the chime also. So let's see if this works here. So breathe in for 6 seconds. And then breathe out, exhaling with a positive thought. Breathe in. Feel yourself relax. And out with a positive thought. And out. Feel the life force of your breath come in. And with a positive thought, just breathe out. Breathe in. Well, I'm not going to do this for the whole hour, but in many ways, you could easily do it, and you'll see that it brings a lot of peace. But for the sake of time, just breathe normally now and kind of bring yourself back to awareness. And as you bring that lens back, just revisit that concern, that original concern, and ask yourself at this point, how your concern affects you. What insights and strengths arise as you see your concern, from a wider level. See, the nervous system is made of two parts, obviously, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic is the revved up part, and the parasympathetic is the relaxed part. The issue is that it reacts, when there's an issue, an event, and it creates fear, and it's autonomic. In other words, it's automatic. It gets stuck. And when it gets stuck, it causes a lot of havoc. Uncomplicated and complicated stress is something we deal with all the time as human beings. Unhealthy stress lives in that gap between what Gregory Bateson said, how nature works and how we think it works. Uncomplicated stress could be, not getting a parking space. And God forbid, complicated stress could be loss of a loved one or an event that really has created a change that creates injury. However, one of the only ways we can really deal with it, since it is part of us being human, is to widen our lens. And when you widen your lens, whether it be through meditation, coherent breathing, it creates a kind of an ecological framework, that is mindful and makes you aware of how stress affects you. If you're not aware, you cannot change. It allows you to be more aware of what may be happening in your life, in your community, your interactions. We're not alone. Things that cause you concern or pain. But in the present moment, that's when we have to deal with it. We can't change the past. So the question is, how could we create and sustain a wider lens? Easier said than done. But mindfulness is the key. And the main tenet of being mindful, or to have a beginner's mind, is to pause and view the world as a part to whole interconnected process. When I was studying at Teachers College back in the late 70s and early 80s, as I date myself, I went down to the computer room in the basement of the library, and I looked up mindfulness because I was going to be doing my dissertation on meditation and mindfulness. And there was like 5 citations. If you go on Google at this right now, after this presentation, you'll see maybe 5 million citations. Yes, it's there, but are we really taking advantage of it? You see, being in the present is what mindfulness is about. First of all, if you don't stay in the present, it's hard. You can't change the past. The world works in that yin and yang manner that I mentioned before. It says no and it says yes, but you have choices. I think of Buddhism, the philosophy of Buddhism, where it's based on suffering, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Oh my God. But at the same time, it's one of the most joyful and positive philosophies. And that's how the world works. There is that yin and yang part, but we have choices. Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese monk who popularized mindfulness and still does in the United States and throughout the world, he says, and read this quote with me also, if you may, when you are mindful, you can recognize, embrace, and handle the pain, the sorrow in you and around you to bring you relief. When you're mindful, you can recognize, embrace, and handle the pain and the sorrow in you and around you to bring you relief. And so here comes the biology of stress and forgiveness. You remember that word, forgiveness. Here it comes around. I mentioned that the nervous system has those two parts, the sympathetic, the revved up part, fight or flight, get the hell out of the way when you're crossing 120th Street or wherever, when something's coming at you or a mountain lion. But then there's also the parasympathetic. But it's autonomic, as I mentioned, and like muscles, it has memory. And once you get into a rhythm of fight or flight, it stays with you. You might be very laid back, and in the back of your mind, you're dealing with things that are stressful. The HPA axis, the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal glands actually go into movement when there's an event. The hypothalamus will send the hormone corticotropin to the pituitary. And when that happens, the pituitary, which usually gives out oxytocin, let me pronounce that right, oxytocin, which is the cuddle hormone, the hormone of love. We need more of that. We don't need it being short-circuited. And then the pituitary gland will send its message to the adrenals, and before you know it, the sympathetic part of your nervous system runs into fight or flight. Excess hormones constrict the blood vessels. The digestive tract, which has to be reconstituted every 48 hours, goes into kind of an auto control. Our subconscious mind is stimulated when revved up, and our conscious mind goes into autopilot. There's something that really blows my mind. The subconscious mind processes stimuli at 30 million per second. In other words, everything you're seeing when you walk into a room is kind of recorded. You'll overtax yourself if you try to figure out all of it, but it's there. And the conscious mind only processes at 30 per second, 30 stimuli per second. That's in 1,000,000 to 1 ratio. Ouch. You're not supposed to save your life 24 hours a day, because when it happens, the blood goes to your arms and your legs. You're supposed to run like heck to get out of the way. But it makes you dumber, believe it or not. It constricts your frontal part of your brain. The only segue to actually rebooting, because it's 95, 97% autonomic, is through breathing. We have control over our breathing, and that's what makes coherent breathing so effective. So here it comes, forgiveness. It's the main ingredient, the glue for creating a supportive environment and dealing with complicated stress. But here it is, first and foremost, for oneself. It's for oneself to choose to live in the present and not allow past grievances or pain to take up unnecessary space in one's head, especially during the holiday season, but all year round. It needs to be understood that forgiveness is not condoning, by the way, or minimizing a hurt you have suffered. It is a means to alleviate injurious stress. Last night I was rereading a book by Anne Lamott, a wonderful book called Almost Everything. And she talks about forgiveness, and I just want to read a little bit from here. As we develop love, appreciation, and forgiveness for others, over time, we may accidentally develop those things towards ourselves too. We have to override our ego. To forgive yourselves and others constantly is necessary. Not only is everyone screwing up, but everyone does screw up. Let me repeat that. Not only is everyone screwed up, but everyone screws up. She says that life feeds anyone who is open to taste its food, its wonder, and its glee, and its immediacy. You see, there is optimism in forgiveness, and there is fear without it. And fear revs up with the nervous system. It revs up the nervous system. A while ago, I was involved with the Stanford University Forgiveness Project, training therapists. And it was hard to get therapists to come to a forgiveness workshop. They said they couldn't do it. They can't forgive. They can't let go of the pain. And hence, there was a lot of fear. It's a process that is very, very profound. Complicated stress is hurting yourself and for those you love. Again, research says that the failure, and this is, research that's very contemporary, failure to forgive yourself or others is the largest source of stress and is the leading risk factor for heart attack and all chronic illnesses. Failure to forgive yourself or others is the largest source of stress and is the leading risk factor for heart attack and all chronic illnesses. There's a study of nuns in Kentucky over a period of, I think, 85 years. And when they get into the convent, they're asked questions of basically their temperament, half full, half empty, the glass half full, half empty. And over a period of 85 years, the results have been that the women who saw life half full lived 10 years longer than the women who saw their life as half empty and had a lot of fear. That's equal to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And so there's a lot of credence to, dealing with complicated stress, and given our medical establishment and the cost of trying to maintain healthy people in our country. Here's a wonderful quote. The world is not imperfect or slowly evolving along a path to perfection. No, it's perfect at every moment. Every sin is already carries by it and the grace in it. The world is not imperfect or slowly evolving along a path to perfection. No, it is perfect at every moment. Every sin already carries grace in it. Again, the yin and yang. Hermann Hesse, who wrote Siddhartha, Narcissus and Goldman, was a very eclectic person. So the process of forgiveness is somewhat simple, easier said than done. Avoid being the victim. Have empathy for yourself. And most important, be now, not in the past. So visualize this. Actually, when you look at or go into yourself and think about the concerns, the differences that you're looking for, the barriers that affect you, things that you're not getting in life. See how it works with your context, the next context, your family, your community, your health. Visualize this and allow yourself to not be the victim. Visualize yourself not being the victim. Visualize yourself having empathy for yourself. And visualize yourself being in the present. That's where solutions come. Our friend Albert Einstein had an interesting perspective on this. He said the true value of a human being can be found in the degree to which he has attained liberation from the self. Read that with me also, if you may. Normally when I do workshops, when I can see people, I always give out index cards with quotes, and have people read quotes as I, walk around and do a workshop. The true value of a human being can be found in the degree to which he has attained liberation. So here's some healthy holiday choices. Instead of focusing on wounded feelings and giving the situation that hurt you power over you, learn to look for the love, the beauty, and the kindness around you. If we cling to our hurts, we will live the pain. It's your decision not to be defined by what has hurt or caused you pain. Remind yourself of the true meaning of this time of year, which is to have peace, joy, and forgiveness. I think of Nelson Mandela after spending all those years in prison. And when he came out, a lot of people said, "Are you going to, get back at the people who hurt you, who locked you up?" And he said, "No way. It's like digging two graves, one for them and one for myself. I don't need that. I have to stay healthy and do the things I need to do." The big thing, is if you're going to forgive, is to create possibilities, celebrate possibilities. And this includes the exciting realm of resolving inevitable conflicts through imagination and improvisation. This leads to creativity. It's a way out of forgiveness because you have to be creative to sometimes leave the past and not condone it. There's a lot of modalities that beckon us to be mindful. I think of Michelangelo. There's a story of him with his cart carrying a big slab of marble up the hill, and a lot of those paisans, yelling and making fun of him. And he looks around and he says, "You know what? There's a beautiful statue in this slab of marble." So, creativity works from possibilities. Pearls are made when, a clam gets gunk in it, and gets upset and creates a coating and spits it out. And all of a sudden we have a beautiful pearl. So conflict and possibilities also allows us to go into other realms because the world works in part to whole manner, part to whole context. So if we're in one context and we have fear, we have a need of forgiveness, or our mental state is not where it should be, and we want to go to another context, we don't want to follow suit and just repeat. I think of like for instance, if you have a banana, I once did a workshop, and I also was at a workshop where Nora Bates and Gregory Bates' daughter threw a banana on the floor, and she said, for everybody, it was about 20 people, "I want you to put that banana into context." At least 5. So all of a sudden, we had 100 different contexts for that banana. Banana bread, slipping on a banana, cicada banana, all kinds of things. I'm from Paterson, New Jersey, across the river. Paterson's a wonderful working class red brick town, surrounded by a river with a large falls that's close to 100 feet, the second largest falls in North America. And it has all kinds of wonderful things. History, the locomotives were built there, the first guns, silk mills. But what they're really famous for is the Paterson hot dog, and that's how they pronounce it, hot dog. It's called a Jersey wiener, and it's very distinct to Paterson. And it's boiled in oil, and it pops up, and they throw sauce on it. And when I think of that hot dog, I think of Paterson. I could write poems about Paterson. I think of the locomotives. I think of my parents. I think of going to school. There's so many different possibilities when you just focus on maybe one thing. But the most important thing is to allow yourself to go into wider possibilities. And that's what creativity is. That's the beautiful statue that Michelangelo made from a slab of marble. So Rebecca Solnit wrote, "Leave the door open. Leave the door open for the unknown. The door into the dark. That's where the most important things come from, where you yourself came from, and where you will go. Keep those possibilities open." Now, in conclusion, I'd like you to try something. Again, it's difficult to be somewhat interactive, so I can't see your faces, and I'm wondering what you're thinking about when I talked about the Paterson hot dog. But here's an exercise I would like you to try. If you have a pencil and paper available, I want you to connect all 9 dots with 4 continuous straight lines, keeping your pen on the paper. So once you hit the paper with your pen, you need to have 4 continuous lines and connect these dots. And I'm only going to give you a minute or so. I tried this with recently with 100 physicians at one of their rounds. They asked me to talk on mindfulness. And a lot of them were kind of playing with their stethoscopes and kind of wondering how to do this. Just try it. Connect all 9 dots, if you may, with 4 continuous straight lines. It's possible, keeping your pen on the paper. Think connecting these dots. For the sake of time, I'm not going to, go beyond our time so we can have questions and stuff, but it is possible. And let me tell you about this first of all. There is a story. I can't not tell you this. I found out about this years ago when I watched a television show called Mr. Wizard. It was this wonderful, empathic fellow who dealt with science, and he talked to kids, and you learn so much. And I remember this way back when. And it came right after, and I'm really dating myself, the show called Winky Dink. And Winky Dink was a kind of a cartoon character. And at that time, you had a plastic cover that that you ordered, and a magic marker, and you would connect lines and stuff like that. So I watched Winky Dink, but unfortunately, I couldn't find the plastic cover. So when Mr. Wizard came on and he had these 9 dots up, I was so excited. I started connecting the dots. Unfortunately, I really messed up the television. My parents were very upset, and they couldn't watch Uncle Milty that evening, and so I didn't get a chance to connect the dots. Well, it's possible, and I keep on saying to myself, if more than 5% of people get this, I will not use it anymore. I've been using it for a while. I'm going to give you the answer right now. Not the best slide, but there are your 9 dots. And if I ask you, what is the key? Well, the key is to go out of the box. Try different possibilities. There's several ways to do it, but each way you have to go out of the box. And by the way, only 5 physicians of the 100 physicians got this. And they all have seen it before. And it shows you, in a way, maybe why they were asking me to talk about mindfulness, because in many ways they were kind of looking at things in a very linear way. Cause and effect is not the way to go. We really need patterns. This is what's called complexity, one context being part of another and a wider one. We're all connected, and we have to step out of the box. So, in conclusion, be able to adjust. In fact, amend and rephrase your grievance, your original concern, in a positive way that represents your original intent. We all have noble intents, but look at it now from a different perspective. Look at it from a wider lens. Make an adjustment. We're human. We're fallible. Why not? And rate your amended version on a scale of 1 to 10 and see if it's different from what it was 35 minutes ago. Make a difference that is a difference. Allow for the sustaining power of being fallible. Be vulnerable. If you want to be a human, be vulnerable. Be fallible. In our society, a lot of times we're not allowed to be that way. Well, you know what? If you're a human, you have to be fallible, and you learn from it. Knowing who you are and understanding your true self to keep you moving forward. And my suggestions, do coherent breathing for a minimum of 5 minutes, say 25 breaths, several times a day. Augment with whatever creative aesthetic things that you like that make you happy. Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga, Aikido, which I've been practicing for over 35 years, poetry, meditation, etc. Be able to adjust, be able to celebrate. Here's a quote from John Dewey. When I went to Teachers College, John Dewey was a big name. It was before my time, believe me, but a lot of the progressive education, Dr. Kremens would talk about John Dewey, and I always remember this quote, and it always brings me back to my days walking through the hallways there in Teachers College. Life, like art, our creaturely destiny is intimately entwined with the realities of nature. And nature is forever oscillating between mutually necessary highs and lows. Here's another wonderful quote that I use a lot with people that in my practice. Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions, and your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. I mean, to me, this is one of the most ecological, systemic, part to whole, interconnected, interdependent words that you could possibly think of. And as I said when I started, it's in things, not ideas. It's in things, not words, that we experience the world. But Gandhi was a person who knew how to experience the world. He knew what nonviolence was, the Sanskrit word ahimsa, which really didn't mean nonviolence. What it meant is to mitigate injurious actions. He was able to lay down in front of a tank in his loincloth and bring down an empire. He knew what he was doing because his beliefs were his thoughts, and his thoughts became his words. His words became his actions and his habits, and his habits were his values, and his destiny was from his values. So do enjoy the holiday season. Allow yourself to be stress-free as much as possible. Allow yourself to be able to stop, to meditate, to just take a moment and understand what's going on in your body. Understand that you don't want to be saving your life 24 hours a day. You don't want to have a stuck nervous system that'll just ruin your lab work when you go for blood work, or you can't do that. And it spills over into other people. And that's what ecology is about. That's what nature's about. We are part of nature. So if you would like to hear more about what I was talking about, my book is out there. You can get it at Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Powell's and Kindle, various different places. And if you really want to contact me, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. My email's up on the screen. My website is on the screen, and I'm more than willing to dialogue, to mutually learn. We have to learn together. We can't learn alone, and that's really, I think, the future that the legacy that we have to give to our children, to keep talking, to keep dialoguing, to be fallible. So thank you very much. Elisa, if you're there, maybe I could take some questions.
Yes, and let's continue this dialoguing. If you have any questions for Kenneth, please send them my way, either through the question panel or through the chat function, and I can read them off. So we'll just wait for a few minutes and see if we get any questions come in. Kenneth, we did have a comment that was sent to me during the presentation, and they just wanted to let you know that they loved Mr. Wizard as well.
I really did love him. He was wonderful. It was probably someone who graduated with me from Teachers College many years ago. Any other questions?
No questions so far. If you have any questions or okay, so we have, so this is about forgiveness and justice. I've been working with the idea of forgiveness in my meditation practice. Where do you think the social action lens aligns with this? I often get wrapped up in the ideas of justice.
That's an interesting question, and it really is something to think about, because I guess I go back to what Gandhi talked about, like, how do you mitigate? Mitigate means lessen the amount of injury. There's always injury in our world. There's always conflict. Nonviolence to Gandhi and Martin Luther King was to go right up to that conflict, that injurious action, and somehow mitigate it, lessen it. Forgiveness, again, doesn't condone. It doesn't minimize. But usually when you don't forgive, you almost look the other way from justice because you're not actively engaging it. You're not actively making change. And it's something that we all struggle with. But I think that, forgiveness has an enormous impact and importance. And sometimes, the word is not the thing because a lot of people still feel that forgiveness is something where you give away your integrity. No, it's like really allowing your integrity to glow. And it allows you to be, I think, part of not only our social economic, but our political establishment in a different way. Think about it. Think about what's going on right now. Is there a lot of forgiveness besides the tit for tat that goes back and forth in a lot of politicians or the polarization? And people have this anger. And anger is a great emotion, but you can't bite. Yeah, you can hiss, but when you're hissing, sometimes you could hiss and allow yourself to lessen the amount of injury. And that's what conflict is about. Conflict isn't bad. It isn't bad, depending on the context, but it could also be very creative. So that's a great question. I really commend that the person who brought that up, because yes, we have to be forgiving in order to be just.
Well, just to follow up on that, she also said that the need for justice may also hold back full forgiveness, and it's just tough to find that line. So do you think you can speak a little bit more about how do you just make that work and align the two, that you can fully
Well,
forgive someone but
you
still
know,
satisfy that need for justice?
well, I guess it depends on the context of justice. Again, the word is not the thing. There's a lot of laws. There's a lot of things that are supposed to be just that are injurious. Uh, look at what's happening again. In our world, where certain laws have have actually impacted uh, injustice, and yet they're laws. So yes, I think that there's certain laws that in many ways could create barriers to the type of forgiveness that we're talking about. However, in order to be able to make a difference, in order to be able to allow and to amend some of these laws, and that things are happening every day. Every day in the Justice Department, every day in Florida, allowing people with criminal records to vote after they redeemed themselves. There's a lot of laws out there that have to be changed. There was laws in the South. There was laws of dealing right now with transgender and diversity and things that support things. What's happening in certain state governments, trying to enact laws which are supposed to be just, but which also have injurious patterns to people. And that's why, whether it be for diversity, gender rights, child rights, race and class, we need to constantly not just turn the other way because of a law or justice. I hope I'm answering the question that way. Yes, it does get in the way, but I think forgiveness is to be very, very active and very much right into that conflict and be able to lessen the amount of injury and to talk about it. And that's how we create, movement and change. Change is when you recognize the anomalies. I learned that in Teachers College, from T.S. Kuhn, who everybody quotes, the scientific law of change, of revolution, the fellow who coined the word paradigm. We can't just accept paradigms. We have to go and we have to look at them and allow them to be just. So that's where forgiveness may come in. And I hope I'm answering the question. If not, please, contact me. I don't mind dialoguing about that.
So we have another question. Um, is it possible to actually enjoy stress? And if so, how can we do that? How can we enjoy the stress?
Well, it's always with us. Actually, you learn. I think I learn a lot from uncomplicated stress. Uh, Also, the way our body works, the way our nervous system works, is that yes, we're going to go into that sympathetic, nervous system at times. When you are doing a sport, when you're doing an activity, there's good stress. Yes, there's stress that's not, that's uncomplicated. But what happens is when it becomes complicated, when someone becomes obsessed, when someone becomes addicted, when someone becomes injurious, and then we're talking about complicated stress. And it's the same as grief. There's uncomplicated grief. You didn't get your candy bar, and then there's complicated grief. And I don't have to give you examples of that. Some grief you learn from. Yeah, I think when I do like Tai Chi, there's a certain amount of stress that actually allows your brain, it actually enhances your brain and it makes you feel, like you're really accomplishing something and you feel the connection, with others. That's stress too. And it's a good point because I don't want you to think that stress is all bad. Complicated stress is bad because it messes up your cardiovascular system. It actually compromises your vagus nerve, and I didn't go into the whole vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is incredible, what it can do, but it actually contracts. And also, all our cells have membranes, information membranes, and when we're in bad stress, they contract. It's like you take cells out and put them in a petri dish and have loud music or something that's violent, they contract. But the cells will also expand in a very wonderful atmosphere. So yes, our bodies are made to have stress. Our bodies are made to have our adrenaline, move. But we don't need to have the hypothalamus send out an extreme warning signal, which means stop, put all the blood in your legs and arms and run like hell. Because if you do that and continue doing that, you're not going to smell the flowers on the pathway. And that's good stress. I mean, good stress is to actually enjoy, what's around you, your environment, and all the stimuli. So that's a good question. It's a good question. I mean, when you're celebrating possibilities, there's some good stress there. Thank you for that question.
The next question piggybacks on the previous two questions regarding forgiveness and justice. So would you say that forgiveness then breaks down the power of the oppressor then?
The power of the what?
Oppressor.
Yes, it actually does. There's a lot of literature on dealing with the oppressed, and we have a society where 1% of the population controls 99% of the wealth. There's going to be suppression. Our poverty rate, I believe, for a family of four is $24,000, and it's very hard to, and that's only 15%, quote unquote. But if you just bring it up to a family of four living, say, with 40,000, which still is pretty difficult, the poverty rate goes up to something like 60%. We have a lot of work to do in our society. So yes, I mean, there are issues of oppression, and when there's power and there's structure, whether it be gender, whether it be law enforcement that is not in touch with the sensitivities of the community. I work with a lot of cops. My father was a police officer for 40 years. There's a lot of wonderful people in law enforcement, but at the same time, it's all connected to our society. And sometimes people in power will continue oppressing. The systems kind of, when you're systemic, you can look at a system and it has its own feedback and it can just perpetuate itself. What I'm talking about is complexity, where one system goes to the next system. Nora Bateson, who I mentioned before, who is a friend and who's been doing a lot of work on what she calls warm data, which is how do you go from one context to the next without just kind of a formula of 1 + 2 = 3. It may be like quantum physics, maybe 100 different ways to look at something and it will all be correct. That's something very different. So when we look at the oppressed, we have to look at the context, the consequences, the poverty, the lack of respect for diversity. Yeah, forgiveness helps. Forgiveness is also very assertive. And the more we're assertive and taking care of ourselves, the more we are apt to make changes, to make differences that are different. And that's another good question. Uh, dealing with the oppressed. Uh, and we have a lot of that. We don't have the equality that we should have. We don't have people, we still have people trying to take away our vote that actually go right to the core of what our society is about. So I think forgiveness and complicated stress is very appropriate for this time. And the more we think about, the more we utilize these strategies, I think the more we are connected. We're connected anyway, but the more we recognize our connections. Love, Gregory Bateson always said that, love is understanding that we're connected or recognizing that we're connected. But wisdom is understand how we're connected. And that's where, nature comes in. We have to see our connections. Thank you for that question also. Wow.
These are great questions. Thank you so
Wonderful
much to
questions.
everyone
I'm
who
writing
sent
it down.
them. If you do want to keep dialoguing with Kenneth, his information is still on the screen, so make sure you jot it down. Kenneth, I want to just take the time to thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise with the TC community. A video of this presentation will be available on our website probably tomorrow, but definitely by Wednesday. And that URL is www.tc.edu/alumni/career-webinars. Please visit our website for more information about our monthly webinars and our upcoming events. We hope you can join us for our next webinar, which is titled Networking for Introverts, on January 24th with alumna Ruth Goshen. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful evening and happy holidays.
Thank you very much.